All right, welcome to Unit 6, Special Education. This is another one-week unit. It's about the IEP process from assessment to implementing programming. Our objectives that learners will increase their knowledge of the special education process from identifying a student who may have a visual impairment and making programming decisions. Learners should also be able to increase their knowledge of placement options and how to make those decisions, what's involved in making those decisions. You have a few assignments due this week. There's an online discussion as usual. First post is due on Wednesday, and then please reply to 2 of your colleagues throughout the rest of the week. It's due October 1st. And then the menu assignment is also due October 1st. It's this Sunday. Your required readings are on how to determine caseloads, effective classroom adaptations, and how to supervise paraeducators. Then you'll be reading Chapter 9 of Foundations of Education, Educational Programming. So concluding thoughts on Discussion 5. Another great discussion. You were asked to watch a video, Little Claire, and determine what kind of concept development was going on. And you guys really had a lot of thoughts, really had a lot of great insight into what was going on and what kind of additional support you would have provided Claire if you would have been her interventionist. And I thought you did a really great job, another great job this week in discussion. Of course, Claire was working on concept development, a lot of different types of concept development. You guys touched on quite a few. She was pouring water from one cup into the next, but she was also learning cause and effect and a lot of functional skills as well. You had great ideas for how to further develop her concept development with adding different kinds of perhaps changing the viscosity of the liquid, or adding different colored cups would have been a way to further develop that concept development. And you also said that you made comments about where the early intervention was placed. Obviously, the woman was not actually working with the child directly, but providing support to the mother. And you made really great comments about that as well. All right, so this week we'll be talking about IEP decisions. And from my own perspective, I feel like the IEP process is just a series of questions that I have to ask myself. What does my student need? And from the very beginning is identification. If you've got a student in your caseload and you're starting from scratch with this person, it's identification. So I ask myself, does the visual impairment impact the student's ability to access their education? This is huge. So we do that through assessment. Really, if the child cannot benefit from instruction in compensatory skills, then we don't have a job. And so this is a very important question that we have to ask ourselves very early on. After we determine that the child does benefit from compensatory skills, we have to ask ourselves, what compensatory skills do they need to be successful? And what are their immediate goals to make sure that they are independent later in life? So, baby steps. Those goals are those things we can meet within 1 year that will ultimately lead to our big goal of independence. Service time, this is a big one. Everyone's always coming up with different grids and things like that, and you'll be reading an article about how to determine service time. But this is a huge question, and it varies from TVI to TVI and from district to district and state to state, but really we ask ourselves, how much direct time does the student need to meet their goals? And how much indirect time is needed to successfully collaborate with other service providers? Make sure that you've given your student enough indirect time so that you can honor your time. That's really important. We need to collaborate with other service providers all the time. We need to make sure that that's on their service grid within their IEP, so that our time is acknowledged when we look at how our caseloads and how much time each student is taking. So adding direct time and making sure it's accurate is really, really important. Placement is a huge decision. What educational setting is most appropriate? That is something that is, all of these questions are IEP team questions, and this one is probably the biggest, and it's, unfortunately, I think a lot of times it's probably the thing that's most influenced by district resources. So you have to ask yourself, what does your student need and how can I get it for them? Sometimes that's the question. Sometimes there's a fight in this one. And that's all I had. I wanted to say that none of these questions can be answered without parent or family member input. We're not in this alone, and the way we treat our parents is, if we care about our students, and we need to make sure that their parents are involved in every question that we have to ask. And all of these questions, parents have to have input. They're the number one stakeholder in our students' lives. They're the ones that have to deal with the aftermath of possibly not having a child that's independent. And so every question, whether it does visual impairment impact their ability to access their environment, we need to ask the parents. We need to ask them, how do you think your child sees? How do you think that they are able to access their environment? We need to ask them, what goals do you want me to work on? What do you think your child needs the most? We need to make sure that they're very involved in placement decisions. We need to make sure that you've given yourself enough time in the IEP meeting to ensure that they've had the opportunity to check out those placement options. That's very, very, very important. And so that's all I have right now. Thank you, and have a great week.